The defending AFC champions, the Kansas
Yes.
City Chiefs. So to simulate three-peating, they trade back to pick 32 um, and take a guy who kind of fell into their lap because a guy who got mocked at 25 pretty often to the Texans, who obviously traded back. But they get Josh Simmons, tackle out of Ohio State.
Yeah, man. One of my favorite picks of the first round. Honestly, one of my favorite drafts in the NFL. The Kansas City Chiefs thought they had a really good draft, and like you said, they let the board come to them. Which honestly, they could have gotten they could have gotten scared in this draft because some of those offensive linemen started going before we thought they would. And
Yeah.
I mean, like Kelvin Banks. I mean, Kelvin Banks is a guy that in a lot of mocks was in the teens, and he ends up going top 10. So I wouldn't have been surprised at all if the Chiefs got a little scared and said, okay, we need to trade up to, pick 20, 25 to go ahead and lock up Josh Simmons, but they just stayed put. And even traded back and picked up an extra fifth, like you said, with the Eagles trade. And they got a potentially, franchise tackle. And they obviously, and Chiefs fans know this, that they need it bad because that was one
Yeah.
of the main reasons that they lost the Super Bowl last season because they just didn't have the offensive line that could hold up and protect Mahomes. And honestly, Mahomes has been like very like tackle dependent in some ways, like years that he doesn't have good tackle play, or go back to the Bucks Super Bowl, another Super Bowl they
Mm-hmm.
lost when the tackle play wasn't up to par. The offense just doesn't function as well. So I think Josh Simmons is great value at one of, or probably the biggest position of need for the Chiefs.
Yeah, usually don't love drafting for need, but when it falls into your lap like that, and when you're in a roster position like the Chiefs too, you sometimes just have to do that. And it's interesting. He's slated, according to our lads, to start behind Jalen Moore to be his backup, but I highly doubt that sticks. It's probably just because he is coming off of the knee injury, and to be honest, he probably goes higher if it weren't for that. But he only gave up like 2 sacks in the past 2 seasons, so pretty solid prospect. And yeah, can slot him in alongside Juwan Taylor as the two tackles to try to help protect Mahomes after, yeah, they kind of got torn apart by what some people are now replicating in the Eagles model of just loading up on so many defensive linemen that you can rotate them out there and attack. So I love the pick for them, and I love the value there at 32 as well.
Yeah, it was really good value because it seemed like everyone was overdrafting offensive linemen, and whereas the Chiefs ended up getting one of the better, I guess, consensus steals, if you will, for an offensive lineman. So I just thought, I mean, I won't say he was the best player available, but he was definitely one of the best players available. And like you said, in a position like the Chiefs, where you're trying to win Super Bowls, man. Like that's
Yeah.
that's the Chiefs' goal. They're not trying to just compete and make the playoffs. They're trying to win Super Bowls. So it makes more sense for a team like that to say, okay, we are just going to attack this position that was clearly, you know, like our kryptonite last year. So
Yeah, love it. And then they go with one of our VFLs, um, Omar Norman-Lott in the second round, who is kind of a polarizing prospect, to be honest. I feel like some people were incredibly high on him, other people were really low on him. And I think at the end of the day, it comes down to two things, which is one, he was incredibly difficult to evaluate from a run defense perspective because he did not have many run defense snaps. And then two, he kind of broke out towards the end of his career, but was kind of an elite pass rusher this past season for Tennessee.
yeah, and I will say, as far as the breakout's concerned, I think we can kind of explain that. I mean, he was kind of
Yeah.
further back on the rotation, like he just didn't get as much playing time. But when he started playing more, he, like you said, he really did break out and was an elite pass rusher last year. So getting an elite defensive interior pass rusher at 63 overall, I think is phenomenal value. He went a little bit above where he was consensus wise, but about his consensus range though. It wasn't like a reach or anything. Um, but honestly, I mean, like you said, he was a bit polarizing. I mean, Trevor and PFF had him ranked like the 27th player or something like that at
First
the end.
round, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. As a first round talent. Um, and I mean, I love this pick, dude. And I'm a little biased. I love Omar Norman Lott, but I think pairing him with a guy like Chris Jones and adding him to that defensive line rotation is phenomenal, dude. And I think they got good value in the second round.
Yeah, and even if he can't be a three down player, like the value of interior pass rush has grown greatly over the past few seasons. I mean, Milton Williams, after one good season, just got handed a ton of money by the Patriots. Um, and he was elite at it. His pass rush win rate led all of college football for interior defensive linemen, and his grade against true pass set, his rushing grade against true pass sets was in the 95th percentile. So he is a elite pass rusher, and pairing that alongside Chris Jones on the interior will be a little terrifying for other opposing offensive lines.
No doubt. And as we saw at Tennessee, he might be better in the rotational role. Like that might just be
True.
that best fits him because that's how he broke out. I mean, that's like if you look at his snap totals, it's not a lot, but as Tennessee fans, we know that we were rotating like 12 deep last year and that no one, even James Pierce Jr., a first round pick, didn't play every series. So, it might be good for Omar Norman-Lott that he's not expected to be slotted in as a starter, but he can be behind a guy like Chris Jones and just come in on pass rush situations.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be able to rotate him early on, and because of the already having a guy like Chris Jones, don't have to rely on him to do too much immediately, so you can let him kind of grow into his own. Um, They then continue adding on the defensive line with some more
Yep.
pass rush capability, and Ashton Gilotti, DN from Louisville, um, who had, in terms of PFF stuff again, had a pretty solid pass rush grade and is also a very good run defender.
Yeah, I thought this was, I mean, good value, man. I think Ashton Gelati's a really productive college player and third round edge rusher. I mean, again, it's the kind of guy that I think in most classes is probably more of a second round talent. But since this edge class was so loaded, he goes in the third round. So again, I thought this was solid value for the Chiefs. And again, adding to that defensive line depth, man. They lost to the Eagles, and everybody's saying in the offseason, oh man, look how the Eagles won the Super Bowl. They built through the trenches and they had one of the best defensive lines in the league that, again, rolled probably about 8 to 10 guys deep. So everyone's trying to duplicate that, and I get it. And the Chiefs continue doing that, and I like it, man. I think he will be, again, kind of like Omar Norman-Lott, not a guy that's going to start, but a
Right.
part of that rotation and can make an impact on, pass rush downs.
Absolutely. And then they go after, sorry, with Ashton Gilotti too. He actually was like the third most athletic edge rusher according to next gen stats and like the profile thing they do. So he's also incredibly athletic. He had a 36.5-inch vertical at 6'3", 264. So
It's
he's
just
got
kind of
burst.
it's kind of shocking a guy that has college production who is athletic going in the third round. Again, it's just I think it's just because of like there was like 10 edge rushers that people are like, oh, these are first round talents. So everyone just gets kind of moved down the board. But dude, Ashton Gelati could legitimately become a steal in the third round for the Chiefs.
Absolutely. And then kind of another, you could consider him a steal, but then they go corner Noel Williams out of Cal, who was not didn't test super well, ran a 4.5, but was really productive in college and is also notorious for being the guy that caught one of Cam Ward's worst plays when he was
Yeah.
rolling to his right, threw back across his body. Noel Williams pick six that in that game. So pick up Noel in the fourth.
Yeah, I thought again that was also pretty solid value
Sorry,
for
third.
them. Yeah, third round. I think it was towards the end of the third round, but yeah, I mean, adding to the secondary depth, man, and like you said, Noel Williams is kind of a ball hawk in college, like that Cam Ward play he had, and yeah, I mean he's listed as a second on the depth chart right now on our lads, so yeah, he could end up making an impact for that defense.
Yeah, probably sooner rather than later because he's listed behind Christian Fulton, who has hopped around a little bit. And as a Titans fan, hit or miss there. So we'll see. He may be able to get some playing time a little bit sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
And then they had probably what for both of us was one of our favorite picks in the entire draft. And they take Jalen Royals
Yep.
with a pick at the very end of near the end of the fourth round. Athletic, productive receiver at Utah State. Didn't play against the highest competition, but was just very good for Utah State.
They have been ever since the Sky Moore pick, they've really been hitting on these wide receivers they've been taking. Now, have they had questions off the field? Yes, they have, and that has kind of come back to bite them. But I think could possibly hit one more time with Jalen Rules, dude. Um, and the receiving core is in a good spot, but like I said, so many of these guys have question marks. Like Rashee Rice is like may or may not get suspended at some point. Xavier Worthy's dealing with stuff off the field, and then Hollywood Brown is like, I mean, that's kind of like rent a receiver at this point. He's like on 1 year deals. So, yeah, Jalen Rules, dude, could make an impact this season. And I think, again, since the Sky Moore miss, they have been really good at evaluating wide receivers. So, and you have Patrick Mahomes, which helps.
Yeah, and what's funny is that a lot of people comps for Jalen Royals was Rashee Rice. So who's been good when he's on the field,
Yes, very
but you
good.
got to get him on the field. So if he can be that as well for Mahomes, Mahomes is, clicks with receivers like that. So that's another reason I love it. It's just a guy with his skill set fits so well with the way Mahomes plays. So love that for them. They then go Jeffrey Bassa, linebacker out of Oregon in the 5th round. Decent athlete, um, you know, decent production as well. Developmental type guy to plug in for some depth. And then Brashard Smith, they take a running back at SMU in the 7th round to add some more depth to that room that has kind of changed a lot over the past few years. Decent athlete, ran a 4.39, but adding him to a running back room that has Kareem Hunt, Isaiah Pacheco, and then they actually signed Elijah Mitchell. So
Every time I see a running back like Brashard Smith be taken in the 7th round, I'm like, I would never spend a pick on a running back in the first 3 rounds, dude. Like, this is a good
literally,
college player. I mean, he was really, really good in college. And I mean, the Chiefs have already hit on late round running backs in Isaiah Pacheco. I believe he was a 6th round pick. So, or maybe even undrafted free agent. What was Pacheco? Was he a 6th round picker?
he was 7th.
7th, there you go. So they've already hit on 7th round running back before in their recent history. And the Chiefs are a perfect like example for this, right, Dakota? Because in 2020, what did they do? They took Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and he has been like by far their least productive running back over the last few years. But their 7th round pick, Isaiah Pacheco, ends up being one of their more productive backs. So that's just, they're kind of like a case study of like why you don't overly invest in that position when you can get a guy like Brashard Smith, who is a very productive player in college, in the 7th round. Thought it was great value, man.
Yeah, they really are a great study on that because they also when they first took Kareem Hunt as well, he was a 3rd round pick back way in 2017. So, you know, they're then taking Clyde Edwards-Helaire and it just completely whiffing. And he was with the Saints last season. His career in Kansas City did not live up to being a 1st round draft pick. So yeah, take late round running backs and then just cycle through them. Like, to be
Agreed.
honest, that's what you do, and it works out. So, love adding a guy like that in the 7th um, to add more depth to that running back room and future-proof it a little bit, at least for in the interim. From a UDFA perspective, they did sign a fullback.
Okay.
Elijah Badger, wide receiver out of Florida, was a guy that was potentially projected to get drafted. And then also really interesting one is Jake Briningstool, tight end out of Clemson. Travis Kelce replacement. UDFA, maybe.
Maybe.
We'll see.
They also signed our boy Will Brooks until they cut him like a week later. So Will Brooks
Yeah.
is no longer on the roster, unfortunately. But yeah, dude. I mean, they had an interesting UDFA class. But overall, as far as their draft class, dude, I think this is one of the best classes in the NFL. We're not ranking them this year, but if I did rank them, it just feels like they got pretty good value at every single one of their picks. Like, it was
Yeah.
like, oh man, this guy, solid value here. And they also attacked positions of, I guess, need, if you will, even though we say you don't draft for need, but it's nice when great players, great consensus value lines up with need as well. And I think that was the case with Jalen Royals and Josh Simmons in the 1st round. So I think overall, really good draft for the Chiefs, man.
Yeah, again, doing what we say is letting the board fall to you, and they just did a fantastic job of that and taking guys that are just good football players.
Yep.
Yeah, they didn't even get to see poor Will Brooks go to playing camp before they were like, we're not going to be
Yeah.
a part of this anymore.
What
They
a
saw him
good
in
man.
person once. They also had a ton of mini camp invites, like more than a lot of other teams. They just had a ton of guys invited just to mini camp. So a lot of guys getting in there to fight for some roster spots. With that in mind, what was your favorite pick? Full bias?
I'm gonna go bias, man. Omar Norman-Lott, second rounder, dude. I think. Listen, I think this is a pick that could really work out for them. Add to that defensive line depth, and I mean, I just don't know how many good defensive interior pass rushers go in the second round. Usually, a guy of that pass rush profile is a first round talent. So I like Omar Norman-Lott in the second round, man.
Love it. Shout out Simmons for them just taking the guy that fell to them, but I'm going to go Jalen Royals in the fourth. Love the value of him there. Love his skill set in this offense with Patrick Mahomes. Think he could make an impact sooner rather than later, much like a lot of these guys like Rashee Rice that they've drafted a little bit later. So love that fit for them.
Love
What
it.
did the consensus say for the Chiefs?
We're kind of lining up with the consensus here, man. Number 4 overall in the NFL, top 5 draft according to the consensus. And I totally agree with it, man. I could even see pushing them a little bit higher on this list here, which is crazy to say when they're already number 4. So I thought they had one of the best drafts in the league, and the consensus agrees.
Yeah, the rich get richer.
Yeah,
This is what
exactly.
helps create dynasties when you both have like a top 3 quarterback in the NFL consistently, and you draft well and build a good roster. So Chiefs do it again.
They do.
That is the Chiefs 2025 class.